when I go to put my extractor back in my bolt, what I do is I put pressure on it with my thumb, and I get that drift pin started. I push it all the way in. And what I always want to do is I want to make sure that on both sides of the bolt, it's flush. I don't have the pin pushing all the way out. It's not hanging out on either side. So I make sure that's there. If I need to, because you know, it's kind of hard, it's tight tolerances, it's under pressure, I can use the flat back of my firing pin to push that pin in and ensure that it's nice and flush. So I have my bolt all the way assembled. How do I check to see if I have good extraction tension, right? So what I do is I take a live round or a fired casing, doesn't really matter, it's just the bolt's not assembled, it's safe to do this, right? What I do is I hook it on the claw of the extractor and I compress it down against the ejector, right? So see, now it's how it would be as if the bolt was in battery, right? Take the fired casing, take that live round, hook it on the claw, compress down the ejector, I have good tension, right? So it's an easy check to see if I have good tension. If it just like falls off the bolt or only goes like an inch and then falls to the ground, then that's not good. You should feel it should feel pretty tense. So I can't tell you how many inch-pounds or whatever. This is going to vary from gun to gun and what setup you have inside your extractor. Next thing I want to talk about is how people clean this thing, how you clean your bolt and how you clean your carrier. Q-tips are useful for cleaning your rifle, especially your bolt, because all the little nooks and crannies, the lugs and the breech face here. But one thing you want to be careful with is if you start stuffing it into the tight compartments, like the back tail end part of the bolt here where the firing pin goes. If I'm doing this and I break off the Q-tip, now I'm gonna have to go get a tool like a punch or whatever and try to drift it out, and it could be a pain in the butt that way. More so, the most cardinal sin you can commit with cleaning this bolt carrying group is to put this into this.
You mean what you just did?
What I just did, right? It's all right, I'm a professional, right? So the reason why I tell you not to do this is that with the gas key here, this is what mates up with your gas tube of your rifle, right? So you fire the weapon, the projectile goes down the barrel, searing hot propellant gas is piped back through the gas block, down the gas tube, and interfaces with this, so it's male and female, right? So this is what's slipping over that little section of stainless steel gas tube inside your receiver, okay? So if I go and I push a Q-tip down in here, and I broke it off right here, how am I gonna get it out? Well, I can go ahead and take my multi-tool and try to get in there, and if I don't have a purchase one, I'm not gonna be able to get it out. Your bolt's pretty much shot at that point. So what you'll see is, you'll see guys take Q-tips and put it in the gas key. That you don't need to do that, right? You'll see guys take pipe cleaners and try to put the pipe cleaner in there. They'll put the pipe cleaner inside the gas tube, which is the most ridiculous thing of all, because there's such a high likelihood of you screwing it up and breaking that cleaning implement off inside. And once you do that, you're buying a whole new carrier. It's virtually impossible to get it off. Alternatively, in the case of this young National Match one, you see on the back side of the bolt carrying group here, of the bolt carrier, there's two bolts, two Allen head bolts that hold the gas key onto the bolt carrier, all right? Now there's a lot of argument about this, and I'm not gonna get trapped in this because it's like one of those like 9mm versus 45 type things, right?
Yeah.
Well, this needs to be staked. So you see on the back side, it stakes. And what staking is basically you're crimping the metal, compressing the metal. You're basically smushing the metal up against the bolt of the two bolts so it can't back out. So the bolt can't rotate out, right? Young has a really, really good explanation of why they don't stake their bolts on their website, and it's very long and full of science and stuff. I recommend just going and reading that.
Yeah, I'll try to find it and put it in the description.
It's a pretty good explanation. The logic is this, is that if I need to replace my gas key and my gas key is staked on, it's next to impossible to get that thing off. It's a pain in the ass, and for the amount of time and effort you're going to put in trying to get that gas key off the carrier, you're better off just working an hour overtime and buying another bolt carrier group, right? But let's just say that you needed to, or you wanted that ability to be able to replace every single component part of your weapon. Well, you don't want to stake bolts then. This is torqued to a certain spec with Loctite and all this other stuff. So by it being not staked and torqued properly, if I really, really needed to, I could remove my gas key and replace it. So if I was one of those guys that made the mistake of putting Q-tips down in here because I'm cleaning this, it's just gonna get dirty with your first shot. You're not gonna really get much carbon out of this. But if I did and I broke the Q-tip off, instead of me spending $100 on a whole component piece, now I'm spending like 10 or 20 bucks just for a gas key. So That's a personal preference thing. As long as you're buying a bolt carrying group from a reputable manufacturer like Young or JP Enterprises, or the list goes on. Like I said, it's a buyer's market. There's so many good companies out there making good products. You shouldn't be buying parts from them if they're not going to stand behind it. Like, listen, I screwed up. Can you send me another gas key? A good company would send you a gas key for free. Like, hey, dumbass, don't do that again. But here, we're gonna take care of you for that. The next thing we're gonna do is we're going to check the wear of our gas rings on the bolt. Okay, so we have our bolt carrier, we have our bolt here. How do I know if I need new gas rings? It's a really easy test. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to slip my bolt loosely into the carrier, right? So if I put it on end and the bolt doesn't slide forward under its own weight, then my gas rings are good to go, all right? So if I go and I slide this in and I tilt it on end and it just immediately goes down, it slides down under its own weight, that means your gas rings are very, very worn. I definitely recommend having spare gas rings. Remember, there's 3 of them, so you're going to need at least 3 to replace it. I'd recommend picking up some gas rings and keeping those handy in your cleaning kit and part of your little AR-15 survival kit, because it's one part that will wear out. I've seen gas rings wear out in as little as 300 rounds, and I've seen gas rings last 10, 20,000 rounds, right? So it's kind of luck of the draw. It's how you fire the weapon. If you go out and just like blam, 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 just blaze away, you're going to put more wear. It's going to wear faster than the guy that shoots 20 rounds slow fire once a month, right? But it's one of those things where anything mechanical could fail. These are one of the most likely things to fail in the bolt, so it's definitely worthwhile having those extra gas rings. Little trick, when you're reassembling the bolt, remember that the extractor claw is always going to be on the right hand side of the gun, okay? So what I do is I put the extractor claw on the right hand side of the gun, because it's going to be kicking it out that way. And now if I look down inside my carrier, I can see that the cam pin hole is aligned in the bolt. I have my cam pin. This thing is like virtually maintenance free. I don't care what treating or coating on it. It could be phosphate. It's very rare that you ever have to take a brush to this. You just wipe it down, re-lubricate it. I drop that down inside my bolt. And you might have to tweak your bolt back and forth, up or down until it aligns. This guy is brand new and a little dry, so.
Young also has really tight tolerances on their stuff.
Yeah, and this is their national match carrier, so that's good. I mean, that's kind of a selling point for this. So I drop my cam pin down in, I rotate it over, and there I go. That's in the proper alignment. If I don't rotate that, my firing pin won't go in. So the gun's always gonna stop you. It's like, hey, you're not doing this right. If you don't have your bolt assembled properly, it's very difficult to put it back on the gun. So it's kind of like a safety check kind of feature built into it, right? Once I have my bolt installed and I have my cam pin installed, what I can do is I take my firing pin and I go ahead and drop it in. Now, if I just drop it in the back like this, it'll fall out, right? So, a little trick to that is you just take it, you have that hole in the back of your carrier, just wrap your hand the whole way around it. It creates a guide for the firing pin to fall in. Most important part of when you're reassembling this bolt, your firing pin's not all the way down. Physically, always physically push it down. Challenge it. Make sure that firing pin is all the way forward as far as it possibly can go. Now that the firing pin's all the way in, we take our firing pin retaining pin, that little cotter pin, and it'll only go in from the left hand side of the bolt. It will not go in from the right hand side, so don't try to force it. And since it's a split cotter pin, sometimes you gotta kind of play with a little bit, rotate it, twist a little bit. You shouldn't have to force it, but you might have to wiggle a little bit till it goes all the way in. And once again, push your finger on it, challenge it, make sure that's as far forward as it possibly can go. Now, if I didn't force my firing pin all the way forward, say I didn't really have much of a chance to clean my my bolt, I just wiped it down real quick, there's a chance that I didn't push my firing pin all the way forward, and now when I put my firing pin retaining pin back into the bolt carrier, it didn't properly retain the firing pin. Now when I shoot my first round, my firing pin is going to fling out the back side of the gun's going to explode, kill you, your family, you know, everybody in the state. Like whatever. It's definitely going to cause a catastrophic failure with your gun. Your gun's going to be unusable until you disassemble the weapon and assemble it properly. What you're going to find is your run-of-the-mill average AR-15 is going to have a Parkerized mil-spec style treatment to the bolt carrier, right? So that's a dull black or gray finish. It's got a little bit of gritty feel to it. And that's perfectly fine. To this day, every single issue M16 and M4 carbine and Mark 18, they all have phosphate bolt carriers, right? So I'm not saying that we have to be confined by 50-year-old technology, but there's nothing wrong with it, right? Now, it's definitely not as slick and as corrosion resistant as some modern finishes. Basically, that's all the proper nomenclature of all the different parts of your bolt carrying group. It's not, you know, it's not rocket science. There's only so many parts in your bolt and carrier. The last thing you want to do is, once you fully assemble your bolt before putting it back in the weapon, is you want to do a little function check. Just smack the bolt, pull it, make sure it feels smooth, it's going back and forth properly. Like guys will dig it where they'll fling it, smack it, fling it, smack it, whatever. You can
fling and smacking's good.
Fling and smack, you know, that's always good. But it's your preference, right? The last thing I want to end this with is that the weapon will fire dirty and wet, not dirty and dry. I've been telling Marines this for years. I've been telling civilian shooters. I've seen so many buddies buy AR-15s and they're like, oh, screw the AR-15. I shot 20 rounds out and it jammed up. I'm like, what lube are you using? That's usually the first thing I ask. Like, well, I didn't lube it since I bought it. So the thing is, it's a high temp operating system. The direct impingement gas, this whole thing is getting surrounded with searing hot propellant gas, heat, carbon. So if you have your bolt lubed up, and I'm talking generous, right? If you think you have too much lube on your bolt where it goes inside the carrier, you're wrong, add more, right? We can talk about lube some other time, but the important thing is you're using some kind of lube where this rotates in the carrier, right? So dirty and wet, not dirty and dry.
All right, so that's basically an overview of the bolt carrier group, you know, all the parts in there and everything. And, you know, I'm not an expert, so to speak, so I like to bring in the experts here. And my buddy Nate Murr is definitely one of those with the AR-15.
I'm not an expert.
No.
I know more than some, less than others.
You're more expertly expert than I am.
We're all students of the gun, all right? We're all students of the gun.
Yeah, so there's a look at that. We have many more videos coming out as far as the AR-15, so stay tuned for those. Comment down below on what you guys use as far as your bolt carrier groups and, you know, lubes and all that stuff we were talking about and what you've seen, so we can go ahead and interact on that. And better yet, make a video about it. Until next time, later. All right, so I'm going to try to be the same place I was. And I'm going to look at the camera.